All right, we're back. Another WFNY podcast. Browns related one like usual because the Browns are 3-1. So who doesn't want to talk Browns, right? This time we're back with the one and only, the legendary Jake Burns, formerly of WFNY, now with the OBR, just killing it, doing all the X's and O's and basically everything you need to know Browns wise. He's got you. Video, stats, anything. But yeah, Jake's joining us tonight, talking a little Browns football. Talk some about Dallas, some about Nick Chubb's injury and what it means going forward, and just we'll go from there. What's up, Jake?
Hey man, I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. You know, I love WFNY, and yeah, let's talk some Browns.
I mean, you've been doing those film breakdowns for years. I mean, I don't know how you did it when they were 0-16 and 2-14, but it's got to be so much better doing it now than it was doing it a few years ago, right?
Well, listen, people ask me that all the time, but it's like I would say the first 2 years of Baker's tenure have been more stressful than the 0-17 year. Like the 0-17 year was kind of oddly fun because you were looking forward. You knew that they were going to be bad. You knew that it was a quarterback draft class, so there was a lot of fun discussion about who they could take and why you liked that guy. And you were just looking for like a bunch of silver linings and you had no expectations of winning. You know, then the next year was stressful because of Hugh Jackson and they shouldn't have kept him. And why isn't Baker playing? And then Baker's playing and they fire these guys mid-season and there's chaos. And then it got kind of fun. It got fun at the end of that year because Freddie caught fire as the OC. And then the next year, like with expectations, man, it was what happens is everybody's ticked off because it's not going the way they think it was going to go, and they want answers. And when my answers for why it's not going the way they think it should be going is not what they want to hear, they get mad and they come at me. And it's like, you know, it's not all too fun when that happens because I don't like arguing with people. You know, I have an opinion. I do a lot of this. I study a lot of it. I have a deep football background. I'm not perfect. I don't work for the team. I don't know everything, but I have a pretty good idea, so I try my best, and I try to stay as objective as possible about it and fair about this thing. And I mean, I'm a Browns fan. I can't lie. I'd be lying if I said I didn't grow up a Browns fan. I'm still a Browns fan, but you got to separate that, man. And but yeah, this year's unique. It's fun. It's nice to feel like the team's run by a bunch of adults who are paying attention to closer and more minute details than you are, right? Like I shouldn't feel like I'm catching things that they aren't. And that's been new. It's nice to see that stuff happening this year.
Run by a bunch of adults. That is a great way to put it. Great way to put it. All right, so let's just get into it. 3-1, we won't talk about the Baltimore game. But besides the Baltimore game, the last 3 weeks, one of the biggest things offensively is that offensive line has been dominant. And them being dominant makes things so much easier for the running game, makes things so much easier for Baker Mayfield, so he's not always under pressure or always worried about being under pressure. You can tell that affected him last year under Freddie Kitchens. He was always like looking behind him, making sure no one was coming behind him. But with this O-line, I mean, it just makes things so much easier offensively.
Yeah, I mean, they shored up. The interior was always good, right? Like, you know, well, I should kind of hesitate there. I think people thought Wyatt Teller could be it, and by the end of last year, you could sense some of the traits were there for Teller to be pretty good. It was just about finding some little idiosyncratic things that could help him kind of consistently do what he can do. Guy's powerful, guy's athletic. It was just finding the right hand placement, the right footwork, the right body angle and hip placement. And that's where they've done a really nice job hiring Bill Callahan. And then you get Callahan in quickly to help Jedrick Wills go from right tackle to left tackle. And that was the biggest problem, is that between Chris Hubbard, and Chris Hubbard has played well when he arrived in his solo game for Jack Conklin, but like with Chris, the thing was consistency, and obviously Greg Robinson, his whole NFL career has been mired by inconsistency. So while the offensive line play wasn't as bad as some people made it out to be last year, it did have issues at tackle. And when you have issues at tackle as a quarterback, you kind of get hesitant. You form some bad habits. You want to bail from pockets. You're worried about high side pressure all the time. So you can still see Baker fighting some of those things, and we'll talk about that. But they're just so much more consistent for their quarterback that the quarterback is starting to feel more comfortable with them. Such great pass sets out of the right tackle. And Jack Conklin's not a perfect pass protector. I think they even study his tape He was never a consistent pass blocker, but he's good enough. He's good enough when he needs to be. He's not, you don't bring in Jack Conklin to block an air raid system, maybe like Cliff Kingsbury or a traditional downfield passing system. What you do is you bring him in to do what he does best, and that's zone block. And the thing that's perfect when you looked at this roster is like, J.C. Treader and Joel Bitonio are kind of malleable guys, man. They can fit in most schemes. They're athletic. They're smart. They're cerebral. They're strong. Just really good leader types. And then they bring along Wyatt Teller, who's built for this system dating back to his Virginia Tech days. And then you get two tackles who were doing it. Obviously Jed's doing it at Alabama with varied RPO schemes tied in. And then you get, Jack Conklin, who's one of Pro Football Focus's higher graded zone blocking tackles. And it's just 5 guys who are made to gel. So it's like you look at the 2014 team and how great that offensive line was with Alex Mack and Greco and Joe Thomas and Mitchell Schwartz. And you're like, these guys are every bit as good, man. Like, they got to look at a way to keep them all here as long as they can. The good part is the tackles are secured for the next 3 or 4 years. You're going to look at Joel Bitonio's contract being up in a couple of years, and he's going to be approaching 30. But there's still, I think, if Joel sees that they're winning, there's no reason to think he won't want to be here. They drafted a really young center behind J.C. Treader if they can't keep him around, guy who's also fit for the system. And then I think, and I've talked to the OBR guys about this and some folks on Twitter, it's time to start talking about an extension for Wyatt Teller and keeping him around.
Yes.
I know it's only been 4 games, but the guy can put together 4 games like we're seeing here. That means something. If you can play the best graded football across the NFL, even if you play average the rest of the way, of course, of 12 games, that's still good enough to warrant being a part of a starting lineup. So that guy should be somebody that they're talking to his agent about, hey, man, we'd love to keep him around for a while. Let's start talking, dollars and cents. So fantastic team in terms of zone blocking. They've done great in terms of pass blocking, pass sets, and being able to handle 5 or 6 man pressures individually. And then they're also doing really, really well with gap schemes. People don't talk enough about gap schemes, power counter, those sort of run schemes that you saw them pop against Washington. They ran everything in the book against Dallas, but they're able to adjust on the fly. So some of the best teams I've ever been around in my days playing football on much lower levels, much more meaningless stuff. But the offensive linemen were smart guys that can adjust on the fly, guys that understand schemes, guys that they're not the prototypical, silly, empty-minded label that sometimes offensive linemen get. And I think that's just some of the best ones out there, man, are the sharpest guys in the football team. So I think the Browns have a good mixture of that going on right now.
For sure. And on that topic, Bitonio and Treader, the Browns knew what they had with them from last year and so on. Wyatt Tellers and Jack Conklin, that's why they gave him so much money to come here. But Teller and Wills's development this year, is that more on the offensive system? Is that Bill Callahan coming in and being one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL and helping them develop, or is that like a combination?
It'd be a yes answer, right? It would be a combination. It's getting guys who do a certain thing well, that's moving and creating angles with their body while blocking. And that's what you have in Jed and Wyatt. Those are 2 guys who tested well. Like if you go back and look at their combines, they tested well for their size. They're not plotting slow players. They're very athletic guys for their size. And the scheme is fit for all 5 guys. And the scheme is fit, I think, pretty well for Chris Hubbard. And I think it fits really well with how Nick Harris plays. So you have, Kendall Lamb, maybe not perfect, but he can be fine if you need him to be fine. And he has starting experience, which is good. So they go 8 deep on the offensive line of guys that fit what they do and have experience. So specifically talking about Wyatt and Jed, yeah, it's Bill Callahan knows if you somebody, I think Ted Wynn posted today it's an hour and 50-minute clinic that Callahan just did yet last year or the year before. And if you care at all about offensive line play, it's not for everybody, man. It's minute and stuff you don't see on Sundays. But if you care about the small stuff, I said the word idiosyncratic earlier, the little nuances of the position, feet, how you work your feet, where you put your hands, how you shift your weight, where your aiming points are in wide zone, or where your aiming point is in your pass set. That's the stuff that he's really good at, and that's what separates an average offensive line coach from a good one. And what makes Bill special is he can adjust not only player technique, but he can adjust a game plan and before a game. And he's a heavy part of what is going on in game to identify what teams are doing to maybe give them run game trouble and hey, we need to adjust to this scheme here. So he's as good as they come. He's been with every coaching staff he's been brought in with. He's stayed with until the ship sunk for whatever reason. You only coach offensive line. You don't control everything. And if you look at his last few locations, they have not been with the best quarterback play. So Bill's great, and I think he's probably one of the best ones. Him and Dante Scarnecchia, the guy over there in New England. And but like I said, it's a mixture of the right scheme for those two guys you mentioned, and a coach who can help take your game from a level that it's at to another level, and that's what we're seeing.
For sure. And I mean, Wills, everyone was worried about Will throughout the preseason with only training camp and no preseason games. Everyone was worried about if Wills, because he went from right tackle at Alabama and was going to be left tackle from day one with the Browns. And it doesn't seem like that big of a deal for the average fan, but for a football standpoint, everything's opposite. So he moves back on the opposite foot, and it's all muscle memory. But I mean, his name has been very rarely mentioned so far, which is great news for the Browns and Wills. And I think that's more to the system, but plus what Bill Callahan can do to develop a young player.
Yeah, Jed's it's different. You're right. I mean, Jed, not only did he play just right tackle in college at Alabama, he played right tackle through high school. Like, he's never been a left tackle. So it's a big adjustment. Not like Jack Conklin, who came out of Michigan State as a left tackle and went to right tackle. His background, Jed, is everything right tackle. What he's doing is, in Brandon Thorne, who's on Twitter, does a great job breaking down offensive line play. Like, all he does is watch. God bless him. He only just watches offensive line, defensive line. Like, man. But everyone has a niche, and he's who I talk to about this stuff all the time. And his pass sets, Jed's pass sets for a guy who's never played on that side is fantastic. And it really has a flair of a Joe Thomas. And he's mentioned it a couple times when he's tweeted it. The way he kick steps and is aggressive to get to his drop, very fluid, is very Joe Thomas-esque. And you can tell Joe has had an influence. The thing that Jed's doing, when you're on the right side, your right hand is going to be a dominant hand for him on the outside. He's taken that right hand and delivering an inside hand punch on his retreat. Tweeted about this on the film breakdown panel for the OBR. He's doing a little bit of that, and it's throwing some people off course. Like, he did it to Alden Smith a couple times, and it just really messed with his pass rush plan. And that's what you want to see. And as a guy who can do different things to mess with, you want to be able. It's a mind game. People don't always think about this. It's a mind game between coordinators, so on and so forth. It's a mind game between defensive ends and offensive tackles about how you're setting up moves for later, or what you're doing to sell one move and come back to another within a single rep. So, or guys think you're going to do one thing and you counter it and just bull rush them. Whatever it is, it's a mind game, and you have to have multiple tricks up your sleeve throughout 65, 70 snaps a game and maybe 35 pass sets a game that you can win enough of those reps with. And Jed's doing a really good job. He's very highly graded offensively in the pass protection element. Little lackluster run game wise. I think there's some things, and I'm going to talk about it tomorrow in a piece in writing, but you can't complain. He's doing more zone than he's accustomed to. He's doing it from the opposite side that he's accustomed to. I would much rather him be comfortable in pass sets from that left side than run game. It'll come. It's a matter of time there. It'll come. So exciting stuff with Jedrick Wills, man.
For sure. All right. So enough talk about the dominant offensive line. We'll move to the guy that stole the spotlight in Dallas Sunday, OBJ. I mean, for a year and a half, Browns fans have been hoping for this type of game. I guess he had it week 2 of last year. He had like 160 yards. But besides that game, it seems like OBJ really hasn't been the number one receiver that Browns fans were hoping for when they traded for him, and Browns as a team did. But Sunday, whether it was the reverses or just making a play with the ball in his hands, he actually looked like one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, even that week 2 Monday night game last year kind of felt like the whole game was stressful offensively, and it just didn't. Even though he produced and had the 80-yard touchdown, it didn't feel like an Odell Beckham game per se. This felt like it, right? Like, catching the reverse pass was really fun way to start. And if you haven't had a chance to watch, if you haven't had a chance to go read Beckham's comments about how cool it was to catch that ball from Jarvis. I would encourage you.
Yes, I was just going to say that too.
Yeah, it's just pretty cool, man. You can see how all the things those two have been through together. But you get the reverse, a 23-yard, you get a couple comeback routes he catches a football on, and obviously, the slant touchdown's fun. It's nice to see him active in the red zone like he should be. And obviously the 50-yard reverse is just kind of silly. I'm gonna be honest. There were a couple throws, and I'm gonna break these down at 8 o'clock when I do a little stream of recapping Baker's day. There's a couple plays that should have been given. Obviously, if he catches that ball up the left sideline on that key third down in the fourth quarter, that's another 25, 30 yards, so he'd be over 100 receiving. There's another whole shot that Baker didn't take to him. That if he catches that ball all the time and makes that safety miss, and it's a 60-yard touchdown, like he does that regularly, even if the safety closes and makes a play on it, it's a 30-yard gain. So it could have been an even bigger day. He's getting open, right? Like he's getting open. They got to keep getting him the football, though. He's moving functionally, speed-wise, looking like himself, like different. Like that guy just kind of looks different. He's moving as well as I've seen since his last year in New York there. So it's all very encouraging. They have to, and I say this all the time, man, like some guys are able to just, no matter what the situation is in a game, they can get going and be a part of it. You got to get Odell going early somehow. Get the football in his hands, make him feel like a part of the game. When you get him actively engaged in the game, not feeling frustrated about being either left out of the game plan or missed in the scheme, I think you get a different version of him. So you have to find ways, and I think the Giants always did this. You have to find ways to get him involved early, make him feel like a part of things, and you can reap those benefits as the game wears on, as we saw, obviously late into the fourth quarter. So, listen, I tweeted before the game it'd be nice for a reminder game from Odell, one of those games, and he had it, and that was really, 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 really fun to see. So hopefully we continue to see more of that stuff going forward.
For sure. And on the topic of just getting guys the ball early, it seems like that's a big part of the offense. Is a lot of guys are touching the ball, which not only allows a lot of players to get going, like you said, OBJ would, but also gets guys to buy in much easier. So I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to overthink things 4 games in, but Stefanski's doing all of the right things on offense right now.
Yeah, you don't necessarily call plays for, to spread it out always. It doesn't always work out that way. It is nice. It's certainly nice. So in the first quarter, they had Hooper with the catch. You have Harrison Bryant with the catch. Jarvis was an active part of third downs, 3 catches for first downs on 3rd and 6 or more, which is just clutch stuff. You had not Kadero Hodge. You had obviously OBJ. I don't think they targeted Donovan, but they got it down. And you like seeing everybody that can be on the football field be an active part of getting a football thrown their way. You can call schemes to have maybe that guy be the first or second read, or you scheme up the first 10 plays, or you look at your first quarter money plays, and some of those plays you'll say, okay, we want to put a couple on here for Hoop, we want to put a couple on here for Odell, we want to put a couple on here we know can go to Jarvis on the 3rd down. There's some of that stuff that happens, but it doesn't always sort of perfectly work out that you've gone 6 throws to 5 different receivers. But it did feel like that, and that part is nice, right? Where they feel like they have to cover every inch of the field. That's a good burden to put on them. And I'll be honest, the Cowboys covered a lot of boot throws and play action throws Cleveland threw at them. They covered them pretty well. They defended the pass fairly well. Baker missed a couple throws that probably could have put him to 250, but based on how well Cleveland was running, I didn't think Dallas bailed on coverage very often to jump up and play the pass game. So like Stefanski, this is the biggest compliment and why I wrote the article about him, calling one of the best games I've ever seen a Cleveland play caller call, was like they couldn't stop the run, and they didn't alter things to stop the run. So, it didn't happen. Like Dallas just didn't adjust. They didn't bring more guys in the box. They didn't shift fronts toward tendency type of runs from a Cleveland formation. And it's like, if it's not broke, man, don't try to overthink it. And that's what people keep saying to me is like, the question keeps coming up, and I knew it would come up about Baker being a game manager. And it's like, they're not just going to throw to throw. They're not just going to throw for the sake of throwing. If teams can't stop them, so you can say, well, this quarterback, whatever. I'll tell you right now, man, like if Andy Reid could run the football 50 times a game for 400 yards, he's just going to do it. Like there's no point in not doing it. So you have to do something until they take it away. Now, they play 2 defenses in the next 2 weeks that will probably do everything in their power to take those runs away. So now they have to figure out what can they do, with Baker and their aerial, I guess, game plan to have answers for if that does come to fruition. So 2 defenses that will really challenge them. Not that they haven't been challenged, because I think Washington is a pretty good defense, and I certainly think Dallas' run defense coming into this game was very good. They have been challenged, and obviously Baltimore's pretty good defense too. So, like I said, they've been challenged a little bit, but these are 2 good ones back-to-back that should see 4 games worth of tendency from the Browns and be able to sort of come up with a plan to take away Cleveland's bread and butter. And then it's like, to me, then it's how do they react from there?
For sure. And I actually had this farther down the list, but you started talking about it there. Baker's short throws. It seems like he's throwing the ball between like -3 and 10 yards to the bubble screen to a first down a lot. I don't know if that's part of the scheme or if that's what's being given to him or if he's just doing that to get the ball in his receivers' hands to let them make the plays. How will that change without Nick Chubb? Do you think defenses will start keying in on that? Do you think they'll allow him to do that more and let the running backs sort of do whatever the running backs do because there's no Nick Chubb in the backfield?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. Indy will give us a good answer on that. I think teams know Kareem's still very good, and he can do almost everything Nick can do, and he's efficient. It's just a matter of where his groin is. And D'Ernest is fine. He can handle this scheme. And Dontrell Hilliard obviously had 5 or 6 carries. He can handle the scheme too. They're not Nick Chubb by any stretch, but currently the Browns are, if they're under center, they're not going to throw many 3-5 step drops under center. They're going to either run the football in some form or fashion, they're going to boot, or they're going to straight drop play action. So you kind of eliminate those things. Like they've tried a couple under center schemes where they're throwing and they didn't handle it well. So if they're in the gun, they don't run from the gun very much right now. If they're in the gun, they're pretty much throwing it. So I don't know. They've got some tendencies. I'm sure like all coaching staff, Josh, they'll have their games. They'll be 4 games in, and then they'll say to the maybe a defensive assistant, or if it's a high school level or a college level, they'll say, hand this off to the defense coordinator. Say, hey, scout me through 3 games. Tell me what my tendencies are, because we have to break them, because opposing teams are doing the same thing. So I expect a little bit more variance. I expect them to be in the gun and try to run from the gun a little bit more. I expect them to throw out of under center a little bit more, some different things. And I certainly expect them to have some boot stuff out of the gun too. So they're going to be varied. They have not. I don't think Sunday they threw a single screen pass. They have not done much to any screen game this year to start the year. So that's a whole other level of offensive functionality Stefanski has not tapped into. I know they've maybe thrown 1 wide receiver or halfback screen. They've only thrown 1 tight end screen. They opened the game against Washington with 1 to Hooper that kind of got caught up, and they threw it late and ended up getting a pretty decent gain out of it. But those are like the only 2 I can think of off the top of my head. So that's, like I said, a whole other element. There's a lot of eye manipulation, misdirection things that they can still do on top of their bread and butter. They're 4 games in, they're 3-1, and there's a lot of other elements that they can still tie into this offense.
For sure. Speaking of screens, I might be wrong, but isn't Stefanski known for running a lot of screens? At least wasn't he known for doing that with the Vikings last year?
Yeah, I put up some data on that. They ran a ton of them last year, I think, and they ran more designed halfback reception schemes where they were putting them in motion, throwing to them quickly. They threw to and not that they haven't thrown to Kareem Hunt. They've obviously thrown to Kareem Hunt, but they did a lot of running back involved screens, a lot of running back involved ISO routes. I think we'll still see more of that, and we will certainly see more creative tight end screens too. They have 3 tight ends, and if they're getting Njoku back, they're going to have obviously 4 tight ends then, and 3 of which are really good pass catchers. So they'll have some creative elements. I think they've got a whole grouping of things that they can still run. I'm pretty excited about the fact of what they've shown so far and what they can still do.
For sure. And I mean, with Kareem Hunt as your starting running back now, he's known for being a running back that can catch the ball really well and make plays by himself. So I feel like without Nick Chubb, screens, like you already said, should become much bigger part of the offense than they have been so far through games.
Yeah, Nick can do it too. I mean, he's done it. We've seen him. We've seen him in his rookie year catch a couple in 2018, catch a couple for big gains. He's more than capable. I do think Kareem gives you a little bit more under center and gun flexibility with that stuff, but yeah, I think it's an element that they'll try to add in, and I'm sure the guys in Indianapolis right now are talking about exactly that eventually they're going to start throwing some screens at us here, so we need to be prepared for it. And that's the thing too, is this is kind of a different tangent, but I did want to get it out there, which is like trick plays and stuff. People were kind of, it's an interesting train of thought, guys. Like, is a trick play when it keeps happening in a game, or is it just something they do? I think Kyle Shanahan talks about how their end-around scheme is like, it's not a trick play, man. It's a part of our offense. Like, we do it all the time. And that's what I like about Stefanski going back to that reverse. The one that worked in the first quarter, going back to it in the fourth quarter is like, teams as a defense, when somebody throws a reverse pass touchdown or the reverse to Odell the first quarter, that's all the trick plays they worked on that week. That's it. We can kind of eliminate those from our thought process now. That's what teams typically do. Like, you have a trick play happen, and then, you relax a little bit because they're not going to run another trick play in this game. Well, they can at any time, and that's what Stefanski's doing in last week's game is like, hey, man, we're going to throw these at you at any moment, and they're a part of who we are. They're a part of our identity is doing these wrinkles. Is like, and that's why I didn't mind the fake punt week one. It's like, it's a part of who you are. You're going to take risks. You're going to do things that keep defenses on their toes, and there's no opportunity for them to let their guard down. I think Alden Smith, for a brief second, let his guard down. And when he let his guard down, that brief second, he can't quite get upfield to catch Odell. And all of a sudden, everybody else who let their guard down is chasing them, and they don't get the right angle. So it's like, I'm fine with that stuff, man. The screen is part of that. Make it a part of what defensive linemen have to always prepare for is being worried about getting too far upfield because you're worried about screen game happening behind you. You start to doubt how quick you rush on a third down because, like, oh, man, these guys run a lot of screen game. I better not get upfield too fast, and that can create more time in the pocket. So I expect the screen game to be a big part of what they do moving forward.
For sure. And going back to that Odell reverse for the touchdown to basically clinch the game, I know Stefanski mentioned that they ran the play earlier in the game and he liked the look. And I'm assuming that that's putting you on the spot. I'm assuming that you already went back and rewatched it, cut it up. Was it the same exact play, or is it just
identical direction? Yep, it's identical.
Okay.
Literally the same play. Yeah, there's you work on it during the week, and he had said the original one that was the reverse pass touchdown. He said he was looking for an opportunity to call it, and he wasn't going to get through the first quarter without calling it because he just loved it. And same with the reverse, man. You're not going to practice a reverse in 14 different variations. You got one way you like to run it, and it was the identical thing. They'll add variants to how they run it over time, schemes and different things.
Sure.
But they decided to, and I like it, man. Like, it's something that worked for you for 23 yards. They're only running it to just get one first down. That's all they really needed was one first down to close that thing out at that point in the game. So, luckily it goes for 50 yards. It's the same thing.
And that was Harrison Bryant that told OBJ, hey, don't go out of bounds. And he was like, hey, thank you, rookie, after he scored the touchdown.
That's right.
Speaking of running the ball, the running backs have dominated through 4 games. I mean, against Dallas, Nick Chubb only had 6 carries for 43 yards before he went out, and the Browns still put up 307 rushing yards. Obviously, OBJ's 73 yards helps that out a little bit. But is it the system? Is it the offensive line's dominance? Like, why is the running game so good? I guess it could be both. I'm sure that will be your answer. But how is the running game so dominant?
I mean, it's 5 guys who it's not just the scheme. A lot of people have tried running this scheme. It's the personnel to fit it, right? Not just 5 offensive linemen who like to do it, but they're 2 tight ends rolling right now, are guys who are very willing blockers and are eager to block. Their wide receivers are a big part of the blocking game too right now. Like, all 11 guys are bought into this. And when all 11 guys are bought into it and all 11 are good at what the system is asking them to do, that's where good offense happens, man. Skilled guys bought into it and the scheme fits. That's where the NFL, you can get dangerous, is when that all comes together. And that's the situation right now. And you have backup running backs who are kind of weaving into it too. Dearness is a fit for what they like to do back there. And that's for Hilliard when he needs to play a little bit too. And I can see Kareem Hunt's comfort growing as well. So listen, man, it's nothing other than good coaching, the right scheme, the right players for the right scheme, and players playing their ass off. That's just the mixture.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that Dearness Johnson and OBJ would be the leading rushers and Baker Mayfield would throw for 165 yards, there is not a chance the Browns would put up 49 points. But, hey, that's happening against the Cowboys, and they look good doing it. So you talked about this. It's like you know my list coming up. Harrison Bryant, he has 7 catches on the season, and obviously he was thrown into the fire a little bit with Njoku's injury. But he has played really well, and I know right when the Browns drafted him in the 4th round, everyone's like, oh, wow, that is a great pick in the 4th round. And through 4 games, he has proven to be just that. I know he's not making plays with the ball in his hands really, but as you alluded to just with your last point, his ability to block like a vet and just be involved without even touching the ball is huge for this offense.
Yeah, he's really following Austin Hooper's path, because if you recall, Austin Hooper, I believe his rookie year was in 2016 with Shanahan in Atlanta, and he didn't play a ton, but he played different locations, different types, and he proved to be a guy as a young guy who could play in that system and could grow in it, and eventually took over. Like, tight ends, it's so hard for tight ends to come in and play well right away, because you go from blocking college defensive ends and linebackers to these grown men, the best athletes in the world play into defensive end at the NFL level, and then you mix in linebackers who have to be fast to play in the NFL. It's a challenge. And then you got to mix in learning routes and learning, you're learning offensive line play and you're learning routes at the same time. So it's very rare for young tight ends to come in and be successful, as we saw with early struggles of David Njoku. But what you like about Bryant, man, is a guy who's adept at both phases. His background as an offensive lineman in high school before he switched to tight end, and then obviously he's the Mackey winner in college. He's not a physical specimen. He's not all too long. He doesn't have a crazy catch radius. He doesn't have long arms to block, but what he does is uses sound technique, and he's willing and hungry to block and to win at the point of attack. People love that George Kittle gets fired up when he buries somebody. It's the same nature that Bryant has when he seals an edge, or when he seals an alley, or when he climbs to a linebacker. Like, he's the same dude who gets fired up on those plays, and he plays with passion, and he's a good enough pass catcher. He's very sure-handed, and he's, like I said, he's not going to be a crazy go over top of you guy like David Njoku is, but he's good enough at doing what you want your tight end to do. And to me, he's a very similar player, and I really love that he's getting paired up with Austin Hooper, because the skill sets are very similar, and both guys, like I said, are adept at blocking when they need to block and have an eagerness to do it. And I love everything I've seen from Harrison Bryant so far. His ability to quickly come in and play in a system that's requiring him to play 30 to 35 to 40 snaps a game, and not just with his hand in the dirt as a tight end, but sometimes motioning in as a fullback, sometimes being a slot, sometimes being a traditional what we call H, where they're in a wing off the side of a tight end or side of a tackle. He's doing it all, man, and he's very quickly absorbed the playbook. He's not making mistakes. So all the things that you want from a young tight end plus some.
For sure. Speaking of Harrison Bryant and Njoku, with Njoku coming back, do you think they'll play 2 tight ends more often? Do you think Bryant will get less snaps? Do you think Njoku's he lost a spot? I mean, right when the Browns drafted Harrison Bryant, everyone was like, well, Njoku's gone. But with Harrison Bryant playing the way he is, what does that mean for Njoku and I guess the 3 tight ends as a whole?
Yeah, they certainly like having all 3 guys that can play, and they like Stephen Carlson too as their 4th guy. Like, They will play them all. They'll find positions to get Njoku on the field. Like, if you remember week 1, he obviously was in the slot when he went up over Tavon Young to catch that high point ball. He can do some crazy things, and he's almost like an offensive weapon. He can play tight end things. He can play traditional tight end things, but he can do different things, and he's a mismatch nightmare. Like, he can line up as an X, he can line up in the slot, he can line up in H, he can line up at Y, he can do a bunch of different things, and he'll be a nice tool for them to sort of have Stefanski get in certain formations where it's 13 personnel on the field. He knows he's going to get linebackers, and he knows that if he gets Njoku lined up in a certain formation against this linebacker, he knows he's going to have a great advantage right there. So that's what I think you'll see, is him being used all over the field. I still think Bryant will get a ton of snaps. He'll do a bunch of different things that they like him to do as a sort of second tight end fullback hybrid deal. and it's a good situation. All fine snaps. You have to bury one tight end to bring in the other. Like this is what we call an advantage, folks. Like this is roster depth. This is a good thing. It's going to be worked out in Cleveland's favor. So be excited about that. Don't be trying to move on from a player.
For sure. All right. So I know the offenses look good. Defenses looked but we cannot end this thing without talking about Myles Garrett and a little bit of Denzel Ward, because I know the defenses looked very poor at times, even though they're getting a lot of turnovers and kind of playing like a bend but don't break, giving up a lot of yards, forcing turnovers. I mean, not too many points. They're letting the offense do what they do. But Myles Garrett, he is earning that contract extension 4 games in.
Yeah, you can tell he's hungry to fight for a shot at a Defensive Player of the Year award. He said he was going to come back this year, very eager to prove his worth and get his name right and all of that stuff, and it's proven. I mean, he makes game-changing plays. You know, he doesn't change every snap, but he makes enough game-changing plays. He's had 6 pressures that have led directly to turnovers, which I believe, if I saw the stat correctly, was as many as the leaders had last year for the year. So,
holy cow.
Yeah, he's made. I think I read that way, but he's making a ton of plays that are leading to pressure, turnovers, bad choices from quarterbacks. So he's playing great football. He's added to his repertoire of moves. He's obviously bending the corner with ease. And what you love too is that they're able to take him and line him up anywhere along the defensive front, and he's able to produce from any spot. So if you're playing Tyron Smith, hey, let's put Myles opposite of Tyron. Let's put him over the right tackle and let him feast on that side this week. If you're playing Mitchell Schwartz, Kansas City, maybe you want to put him over the left tackle this week because then he can feast on that guy. He's versatile. He's a freak of nature physically. He's using different moves and techniques to win now. He is dangerous. Teams have to account for him. Dallas had to change their entire second-half game plan to chip him and get a second body on him to slow him down. So, the reason Dallas was still able to get off is a different discussion. But, and Denzel's playing fine too. Like Denzel's battling a groin, playing okay. He's let 2 touchdowns happen right across his face. I don't love the Washington first touchdown was a ball that people tried to blame on Sendejo that was not his fault. Yep. Denzel widened, expanded too far. And the same thing happened on that slant where everybody was jumping Sendejo for that slant, but Denzel once again widened out too far. And that ball that it's not really a slant, it's more of a drive angle route where the receiver's pushing 5 at a 45 and then hard cutting inside from a tight pre-snap location. Denzel doesn't close on that. He's got to get a little quicker at closing on those throws that are happening across his face, something to get better at. But I can't complain about him. He's tackling well in the open field. You like to see that, tackling going low, keeping his head out of the formula, doing a great job there, challenging balls up the sideline, should have more than 1 interception, but he did a great job. And that was a fantastic play on the goal line to jump that throw, almost eerily Malcolm Butler-esque on that last interception there, jumping that and really closing – the split second he needed to close to cut off Amari Cooper and make that play. Denzel's fine. Terrence.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Jake. Jake, are you there? You there,
Yeah,
Jake?
I see you. You got me still?
Okay. Yes, you're still here. You're good. All right. So back, I guess we were talking about Denzel.
Yeah, no, I think Denzel and Terrence Mitchell are playing good football. They're not the problem. Those 2 outside, the problems are elsewhere. But Denzel, Myles are the anchors of this team right now on defense.
I'm still hung up on that Myles Garrett stat. The 6 quarterback pressures led the league last year, and he has 6 through 4 games. That is insane. I did not know that.
Fact check it, man. People can fact check that. I thought I read it on the fly, but it would be staggering through 4 games to already be there. Not all pressures lead to turnovers, though, so it's semi-believable. I mean, it's really believable. We'll just have to see if it is the actual case.
I mean, he has 3 strip sacks that I think the Browns have scored 3 touchdowns on. So that alone, that's 3 out of the 6. But either way, that's incredible. But yeah. So I guess that's it. We didn't talk about everything that we could have talked about, but that's enough for kind of like a Browns recap as talk about the season through 4 weeks. Yeah. So Jake, thanks for joining us. And actually, I know you're doing a little breakdown live on your YouTube at 8 o'clock. So give that a little plug.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to every week put up Baker's film and kind of what happens is I write an article on this, and I'm not sure people understand what I'm thinking and what I'm saying about him. And I think there's a lot of nuance that goes into what I'm trying to pass along. So we are going to try it as a live stream, open forum for questions as I go through the tape, and people can fire away with anything they want. And that'll be on the OBR YouTube channel for anybody who would like to watch. So yeah, should be fun if you want to go over and check out some quarterback play stuff.
Yeah, so if you're watching this live in just over an hour, head over to the OBR YouTube page. And I mean, I don't know how Jake does it. I know he has plenty of experience, but I've learned so much just reading your tweets, watching videos. It's crazy. So yeah, definitely head over to the OBR YouTube page and watch Jake do a live breakdown, I guess. But on with that, I know this is the first week. I hope that we can make this a weekly thing. I guess we'll just see how our schedules go going forward. But yeah, I loved having you on here, Jake. And welcome back to the Waiting for Next Year, just for a little bit. Even though it was only for 40 minutes, but welcome back a little.
Hey, man, I'm always game. You let me know, bro. I appreciate you guys having me.
All right. Thanks, Jake.